On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. As it seems right here in this video, I don't know if you guys remember this from Ocean's 11 or 12 or whatever the heck one it was, where this guy was going through the laser show and he was doing this elaborate dance routine basically to get to the jewels on the other side. And basically I think that's what we're experiencing right now with what Trump's doing, with this Red October, with the things that are going to be happening through this month, supposedly even through the way the debate went. Trump, even the way he was intentionally kind of bringing things up and attacking Biden in certain ways, bringing up Hunter, bringing up the $3.5 million from the Russian. Like, he again brought up a lot of unique information, which is what he did last time when he was doing it with Hillary, as he was bringing up a lot of the illegal stuff that was happening around her. So Trump, and this is something I was kind of listening to, and it's a pretty good concept. I like it. But it's definitely along the lines of what's been going on, it seems. And we'll see how this all plays out. A bunch of Q posts. In fact, they're probably going to continue to come. We'll see. Hopefully I don't get any during the recording because it tends to make an annoying noise. But we'll see how this plays out. I want to jump to one first. So where we left off was 4794 is where we were left off. I want to get to that in just a second. I'm going to jump ahead a couple just because I think it's relevant and important. But apparently there's fake or doctored images or videos that are being dropped somewhere. I haven't gone looking for them. I don't see them, and I'm certainly not going to share them. But they're talking these videos from Epstein's cell cam is explicitly designed to ban or terminate any Twitter user that's reposting them. So do not take the bait. It's just to give you a quick heads up. There's something going on out there. Don't take the bait. If you go and look for it, great, but don't go and share it because you will find out probably that you will get banned. I'm pretty sure this is something that's already happened to a few people, so we'll see how that all plays out as well. So that's 4803, jumped ahead a little. 4794, got a lot going on here. We got this Federalist argument. It really gets into the CIA, this director, Gina Haspel, is blocking declassification of remaining Russiagate documents. Kind of weird how this is all playing out. We're going to give a little video here with Tucker Carlson and see if we can maybe offer a little bit of understanding into what's actually happening here.
This isn't just a scandal about Democrat projection. This is a scandal about what was a coup planned against the incoming administration at the highest levels. And I can report here tonight that these declassifications that have come out, those weren't easy to get out. And there's, in fact, far more waiting to get out. Unfortunately, those releases and declassifications, according to multiple sources I've talked to, are being blocked by CIA Director Gina Haspel, who herself was the main link between Washington and London as the London station chief for John Brennan's CIA during the 2016 election. Recall, it was London where Christopher Steele was doing all this work. And I'm told that it is Gina Haspel personally who's blocking continued declassification of these documents that will show the American people the truth of what actually happened.
Why are we putting up with this? I mean, they're still holding documents from the Kennedy assassination, the Warren Commission documents. We still don't know everything there. Why is that 55 years later, 7 years later? They're blocking the release of so many documents. Why doesn't somebody, anyone in power could do this, stand up and say, no, these are going public now?
That's a great question. I think one reason is that so many of the people blocking these documents are likely implicated by them. You have these career bureaucrats whose careers may be destroyed by the facts that are within them. And I think at this point, we need the president, Donald Trump, to step in and say no more obstruction, no more blocking. We need transparency, and the American people need to hear the truth. And that means declassifying everything, letting everyone see everything about what happened so we can decide for ourselves before we vote in this election.
They keep talking about, like, you know, the truth should be out there for us. Like the left is very fond of trying to say, well, Trump should open up his thing. Trump should show us his finances, right? Well, let us see these documents. Let us reveal this information that is bound to make you guys look guilty. Again, it's funny how the game is played. Obviously, the CIA doesn't want to release this information. One, because it's probably going to show that Brennan was far more tied up in this. Two, this Haspel lady's probably very tied up in this. And why doesn't the CIA even release stuff around the Kennedy assassination? I don't want to get off on that conspiracy, but I think a lot of us probably get the same general vibe, don't we? So it's interesting how this is all playing out. We've got the CIA lady that was in London, which is where Steele and all that stuff was happening. So let's continue on. Some believe the protection of the agency is what matters most. Can't possibly have the CIA, can't have people find out exactly how crazy it really is. Some believe the declassification or the public exposure of the truth and the rebuilding of the agency is what matters most. So we've got two sides of this, right? One side that do not look behind the curtain, you're not allowed, it's stapled to the wall, you can't get in there. And the other side is like, we've got to get behind that curtain. It's the only way the American people and the administrations going forward will ever have faith in this mysterious organization that has been kind of involved in a lot of nefarious things in the past, certainly, and done probably many wonderful things, I'm sure. I'm sure most of the people in the CIA are doing a great bang-up job for us. But obviously, just like any place, you get some bad apples, they can actually accomplish a lot of very bad things. So let's apply the same to the FBI. Let's apply the same to the state. Obviously, we've got a lot of bureaucracy there's corruption everywhere within our government. We need to clean it all up. So apparently, any attempts to buck the system, no matter the severity of the crime, and they are going to fight back with everything they have. We've been seeing this. It's what Trump's been experiencing from day one. He even said early on when he was debating Hillary, because you'd be in jail, was his answer to her. He's never played by the rules. They have attacked him from day one because they know he doesn't play by the rules. He's not bought and paid for by anyone else. He's essentially, well, one, old money, but two, self-made. He's created more wealth within his own life. So he's not bought and paid for by anyone. In fact, he's used a lot of his own money for many of these different things. So we've got a big old shadow game going on. You got to prevent the public from knowing what actually happened. Not just anons, not just people like us, but you've got to create the general Joe public. They can't know what's going on. The only thing they can know is what they keep getting told by the media, which is Trump's bad, Orange Man bad, Russia, Russia, Russia. As long as they don't peel back the curtain and look at anything else, Joe public has no idea. So this is all about preventing the public from knowing what's going on. And the question is why? I mean, I think a lot of us could probably answer that, but people united have great power. That scares a government more than anything, is the people suddenly waking up and realizing that they're much stronger than the federal government or any government. So it's very scary to any sense of government. Now, government that's properly we the people, for the people, by the people, kind of different, because then technically we're the government, which we should remember is the case. But right now we're too busy fighting each other with race, with sex, with creed, with everything under the sun. They've got us divided every possible way they can. I think a lot of us are doing our parts to unite as best we can, but it is what's happening. So that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. They're deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. And truly, I think there's a lot of truth to that statement. And right now, it does seem like we're in a pretty hard situation, aren't we? Got a lot of things that seem stacked against us. And what we don't see is the silent masses. Most of us are not seeing how many people out there actually are starting to figure this out, that are actually starting to wake up to this. And that's what's frustrating to so many, because you hear the people with the loud bullhorns, you hear them yelling and screaming, but you don't see anything changing. And you fear that the people yelling and screaming are actually a majority, when in fact they're just a very small minority and just a very loud minority. 4795, we've got a Twitter post here and talking about the marathon ending, it seems. But this is pretty cool. It's about time that something happens. It's enough. We've got plenty of information on these crooks, a bunch of crooks. It's a cool little 26 seconds of Trump here. I hope you guys like it.
Did you go for a coup? Did you go for a coup? I don't remember. I know. I'll tell you, we caught him cold. It's about time that something happens, okay? It's about time that something happens. It's enough got plenty of information on these crooks, bunch of crooks. Thing like that's never happened in the history of our country, and it's about time that something happens.
And obviously a lot of this is speaking to the Comey interview that just recently happened. And Comey denied knowing anything, denied being involved, just deny. And of course it's the largest river in Africa, the Nile. But yeah, and there's a bunch of crap. And so senators were going off on him. But I mean, is anyone surprised really? First off, it's a remote interview. So you can't, it's really different when you can't see a full person's body and expressions and different ticks and twitches and all the different stuff they do. When it's just on camera and you've only got this much of their body showing and the guy's got like another 8 feet worth of body hiding someplace. Yeah, who knows what sort of crazy stuff he's not letting us know. And on top of that, of course he's lying. It's just silly. Come on now. So 4796, we've got another drop here that's kind of interesting. And again, there's a lot of weird stuff's being called out, right? Like we had that CIA thing, and it makes you wonder, like, who's in charge then? Like, why isn't the person in charge just saying, F you, we're going to release that stuff? That one still kind of gets me, and I'm assuming things are happening in that vein. But it is interesting how one person can stop this entire flow of people waking up, of people informing what's going on. And again, it's worth noting that that is all they can try to do. I mean, it's happening everywhere. The judge Sullivan, that's keeping Flynn down. I mean, that's happening there. It's just a lot of strange stuff. And supposedly he's not going to be hearing arguments until, was it like the 7th? Like a little later next week, I want to say. And then who knows what happens after that. So again, a lot of crazy stuff is going on around that. And here we've got a case of this Honorable Ledberger, or whatever the hell, Audrey Strauss is basically kind of recusing herself. I write respectfully to inform that the courts that I will be leaving the United States Attorney's Office. Accordingly, I request the entry of an order terminating my appearance in this matter. My colleague, AUSA Lucas Issacharoff, has entered an appearance on behalf of the defendants and will continue to handle these cases. Now, this Issacharoff guy is related to her, which is kind of interesting. So anyway, we've got more from Nurse Deplorable. Hold up, U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of New York, which again, the Southern District of New York, which is where all the Ghislaine Maxwell stuff and the Epstein stuff happened, as well as some of this Flynn stuff and some other stuff. The taxes probably came out of there too. So U.S. Attorney of SDA NY stepped down, and Lucas Issacharoff steps in. This is Comey's son-in-law. And he married... apparently married, or this is Comey's son-in-law married for Maureen. So they're bringing in Comey's son-in-law on this. So the daughter of Maureen Comey is married to this dude right here, but he's Lucas Issacharoff. Like, that's really weird. The daughter of Comey was the one that looked into the Epstein case, right? So she was involved with that. And then now all of a sudden we've got her husband is the one that's actually looking into Ghislaine Maxwell. So, one, that seems very strange. All these people that are surrounding Comey, we're still keeping it within that little circle. We've already seen that Comey's got relationships with all these people in the Clinton Foundation. Again, this is how the deep state works. You keep all these little pockets and groups closely connected. It's just the few people you trust. You make gobs and gobs and gobs of money, and nobody ever figures it out because you control all the points of information until you don't. And that's sort of what's going on right now. So we got a little bit of a Twitter thing here, too, that's kind of getting into the same thing. Again, just pointing out who this guy is. Lucas Issacharoff steps in. This is Comey's son-in-law, blah-de-blah. He was married to the same person, obviously, that was, again, doing Epstein's case. So it's very strange. Eyes on, follow the family. Now, again, what bothers me, again, and there's a few things that bother me in these posts, but isn't the Attorney General, isn't Bill Barr, like, over all this stuff? Isn't that what he does? So how did this person end up on this case? How did this Issacharoff guy end up on this case? Are they doing it intentionally? Are they doing it and maybe following this guy and looking very closely at what he does? I mean, he's a lawyer, so to a degree, it's not okay to spy on him. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But this smells. This reeks from a few different directions. And again, I'm going to be questioning everything that happens because I'm not just on this bandwagon that no matter what, everything is, Trump is definitely the savior of the world. I'm hoping he is. Let's put it that way. I very much hope he is. But I'm going to scrutinize every step of this because I'm not letting my guard down. I don't trust the government. I haven't for a long time. That's why I like Trump, because he's not a government guy. So we'll see. And I'm hoping, But I don't understand why this person or why this nonsense is allowed to happen. That seems to me to be a little strange. We'll see how that plays out. So continuing on that vein, 4797, James Comey's daughter inspected missing Epstein suicide footage. Now, this might be the thing that is going around right now that's getting people in trouble. So just be careful, again, not to share this information. Apparently this footage is bad stuff, so I'm not going to dig into it, and I'm not clicking into this any further anyway. But Comey's daughter investigated Epstein's suicide, and her husband does Ghislaine Maxwell's case. Like, huh? Now, again, this wasn't Q that wrote this, so I wouldn't get too worried about her husband. That, to me, looks like someone hit the shift key when they were hitting her. I don't know why they were going to capitalize the H, but it looks like they hit the caps lock key and basically went reverse on him. I don't know. That's just me. But do you believe in coincidences? I don't. I don't believe in coincidence at all. Ever. Never. Right? It's not Murphy. Is it Murphy's Law? Is that the one? No, Occam's razor, right? The most likely situation is the one that makes the simplest, right? Generally speaking. So coincidence really tries to make it a lot more crazy when we've got all these interesting little tidbits of information that line up oddly well, if you think about it. 4798, continuing with the same censorship stuff that we've been talking a lot about. And again, heading into October 1st today, right? Red October is here. Hunting red, going deep, zero dive bubble, whatever, right? 60 feet, wherever the heck we're at. So Facebook says, as part of its recent crackdowns on QAnon and this malicious stuff, they have removed 6,500 groups that are belonging to 300 different organizations, apparently. So Facebook says, as part of this recent crackdown, yada, yada. And this was, of course, by Isaac Novak, and this is the article that we're talking about. Now, this article has a link in it, so we'll just go straight to that, because I thought this was the weirdest little thing. I don't know if they're getting points for the clicks or what. But then we click in again. And Facebook has removed more than 6,500 militia groups and pages, obviously. It's like, how much can we beat up the same point? But I know folks are curious about the new militarized social movement policy announced on August 19th. Bottom line, we've identified more than 300 groups under the policy and removed more than 6,500 groups. Now, a lot of this is coming around the whole Proud Boys thing. Everyone's talking about the Proud Boys. They had President Trump basically tell them to stand down, which I think is really interesting. We've got to point out the absolute irony. One, during the debates, Biden would not speak poorly of Antifa, would not do it. Yet, Chris Wallace, Deep State, forces kind of Trump to basically call out the Proud Boys. And Trump even says, who? What name do you want me to give? Who? And he says Proud Boys. So Trump's like, all right, Proud Boys, stand back, stand down, whatever the hell he said. So he did that. And he's basically said many, many times, I'm not okay with violence, not with white supremacists, not with anybody. And then they continued to question Trump over the next cycle, to even into today. They're still asking him questions about, does he support these horrible groups, these racist groups, yada, yada. Problem is, left's not calling out any of the crap that's happening from Antifa. The riots and protests, 99.9% of all the violence and damage has been Antifa. They're carrying their flags, they're wearing the black mask, they've got the goggles on, they're doing the whole 9 yards. Proud Boys show up. They don't really cause a whole lot of ruckus, but they do show up kind of prepared to cause problems, if you will. And so that's something that seems to frustrate the right, because they come in and they kind of mean business. Now, they keep referring to Kenosha, so I think it's the kid that had the AR that was out there trying to provide assistance to folks. He was putting out fires. He was providing aid. He was an EMT. Shouldn't have been out there probably anyway, but that all being said, he was out there and some bad stuff happened. So they're trying to keep the right from doing anything, but they still haven't spoken down about the left. Really has to make you wonder what's going on. So again, they're talking about Wisconsin militia groups. They're talking about how they failed to remove this event page that happened, and a 17-year-old was charged with first-degree murder. Again, that's from all the evidence that's coming out with that, most likely the one thing he's going to get in trouble for is being a minor in public with a firearm, I think is probably the one thing he did that was wrong. Outside of that, it's looking very much like he was attacked at first, that these guys were coming after him for long periods of time, and finally the resultant clash happened, and it didn't go well for the people that were essentially trying to attack him. I can't remember the dude's name right now. I don't know why. It doesn't matter. People, so many friggin' names out there with all these people. 4799. This one's kind of interesting too. So they are bringing in a lot of weird stuff in this particular set of Q posts. This is the Catholic Church. Mike Pompeo went out there and wanted to get a little message or get to meet with the Holy See and was denied. And was denied on the premise that they don't do those kinds of things during election years. They felt that it might be a little more problematic. That might be Mike Pompeo trying to like cuddle up with the Vatican before the election, so it looks to all the Catholics that maybe want to vote for Joe Biden because he's some form of Catholic too. That they don't want to get in the middle of it. I guess whether that's right, wrong, I don't think that's true. And we've got some interesting comments that Q brings up, but it also brings up one of the other huge points that's going on right now, and that's the Catholic Church's involvement with China. And there's a few things that are kind of interesting about that. One of them that really jumps out is for decades, China's communist government operated a Catholic Church that it controlled, insisting that Beijing, not the Vatican, had the power to appoint bishops while persecuting priests and parishioners who answer to the Holy See. Under a 2018 agreement, China recognized some papal authority, and the church accepted the legitimacy of bishops chosen by Beijing. A shameful retreat, according to Francis's critics. And so, apparently, while Pompeo was out there, he actually met with the people on the other side of Francis, Pope Francis, and was apparently got a little tap with them or spend a little time with them. So not sure if he's out there basically trying to rough things up a little bit, because it seems that the Catholic Church has kind of gotten in bed or is trying to get in bed with China. And really what Pompeo wanted to talk about was the human rights abuses that China is famous for, and trying to get the Catholic Church to essentially use its relationships with China to kind of get them to sort of back down. But instead of that, we've got our government that got in bed with China. We've got the sports and all these other movies and all this stuff that are getting in bed with China. And now the Catholic Church is getting in bed with China, where there's only one church in all of China. But for some reason, the Catholic Church still wants to get into that place. Now, of course, it's $1 billion people, and they are all about trying to spread religion. But it is very interesting how that's playing out. So I think a lot of people are kind of questioning all of that. So what's going on here is, rebuffed by Vatican, Pompeo assails China and aligns with Pope's critics. Pope Francis declines to see Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who's demanding a harder Vatican line on China. The Holy See said meeting just before the U.S. election would be inappropriate. So in Rome, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo recently published a sharp letter excoriating the Vatican's plan to renew an agreement with the Chinese government on church operations in China. He promoted the article in a tweet concluding, "The Vatican endangers its moral authority should it renew the deal." An indignant Vatican took the article more as a calculated affront than a diplomatic gesture. The friction broke into the open on Wednesday as Mike Pompeo arrived in Rome and met with prelates and other who are hostile to Pope Francis, while the Vatican denied him a meeting with the pontiff and rebuffed his efforts to derail the deal with China. Pompeo asked to meet the Pope, who turned him down because Francis had already clearly said that he does not receive political figures ahead of the elections. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who, as Secretary of State, is the Vatican's second-ranking official, told reporters. But to some observers on both sides of the tensions between the Roman Catholic Church and the Trump administration, Mr. Pompeo's visit is as much about the coming presidential election as about China policy. Mr. Pompeo dismissed that suggestions as absurd, but intended or not, his trip signals that President Trump is on the side of those conservative American Catholics who worry about the church's direction under Francis and think he is soft on China. Francis and Mr. Trump, who have exchanged sharp words in the past, presently starkly different visions on issues ranging from the environment to immigration to the threat of populism. In appealing to the Vatican's support for religious freedom as a reason to drop its China agreement, Mr. Pompeo seemed to seek common ground, but in a way that upset the Pope's chief allies and delighted the chief's critics. Cardinal Parolin said Mr. Pompeo's article had caused a surprise at the Vatican because the visit to Rome by the secretary and the meeting with the high officials at the Holy See had already been in the works and would have been a more opportune forum for airing grievances. He added that Mr. Pompeo's choice to publish in First Things, a conservative Christian magazine that he has called Francis a failure as a pope, also mattered. Now, one of the things they point out, that Q points out, I should say, when does a church become a playground? When does a church become a business? When does a church become political? When does a church become corrupt? When does a church become willfully blind? And when does a church become controlled? There's a lot of history around the Catholic Church. I was brought up Catholic. I'm kind of not really a very good practicing one anymore. I'm very, very super spiritual, but I've kind of gotten pretty miffed at the religion. I think the religion's covered up a lot of horrible things that have happened to people. I went to parochial schools. I know people that have had experiences that were totally uncool, and all they were was paid off some money, and that was the end of it. So things are kind of a little grumpy in my mind towards the church. I love the fact that there's plenty of Catholic people, so I don't want to say anything poor. I think anybody that's got a spiritual side or is practicing their spiritual values is something to always be celebrated, even if you're Catholic, even if you're some other form of a Christian faith. I'm totally cool with all that. But again, the Catholic Church definitely has some history and is not free from sin. And it seems that this new pope, and some have suggested might be one of the last, if not the last, is maybe failing. We'll see. But he certainly seems to be in bed with the deep state. And I think that's one of the questions that they're trying to bring out without just directly calling out the Catholic Church. Kind of a tough thing to do. Post 4800, Red October. This one was literally sent out like early, like right at 12:15 a.m. on October 1st. Like Q was just waiting. He's like, all right, now it's October 1st. Let the games begin. And so, yes, the hunters become the united, or hunted, I should say. I don't know why I say united. That's kind of funny. But we are in an interesting time, and yeah, things are going to be coming out over the next few days. And from what we're seeing, the CIA is doing everything in their power to stop any sort of releasing of information. The Catholic Church is doing everything in its power to maybe not face some of the larger problems that we have on this planet. There's a lot of stuff that is being called out. Post 4801. So Steve Scully, moderator for the second presidential debate. This is super interesting. They call out a neat little quote in there. While attending college, he served as an intern in the office of Delaware Senate Joseph Biden. And to continue the rest of that quote, and later a staff assistant in Senator Edward M. Kennedy's communication office. So he's been hanging out with the Dems for a while, and he's got quite an illustrious career in radio, broadcasting, and all that kind of stuff, which, you know, from my standpoint, good on you. That's very cool. But he is definitely not necessarily, well, he's a deep state player, let's be honest. Let's call a spade a spade. So the question is this a rigged system? Could be. They're talking about a mute button that Trump won't be able to interrupt, right? Like that may be the only way they'll go. Now, I know Trump is not going to agree to that, because giving Steve Scully, as an example, the ability to shut Trump up, can you imagine, like, first off, most Dems would be like, just keep the mute button on the whole time. But the fact that we're actually going to give some moderator more power to stop and stifle the speaking of the president of our United States right now, it's just disrespect on top of disrespect. I get that Trump interrupted Biden some like 140 times to Biden's 80 times or whatever the heck. Still, apparently that was part of what Trump's plan was. Whether it hurt him or hurt, I don't know. Helped him or hurt him, I'm not sure. I really do feel like it did both. I think for his base, they probably liked it, but I think people that are in the middle and kind of floating around, it definitely didn't help them out at all. I'm sure of that. So we'll see. I mean, again, am I happy with what Trump's trying to do? I think he's trying to fix the world in a major way. I think he's trying to clear out a lot of this deep state nastiness. So yeah, I'm really on board with what he's trying to do. I'm just super hopeful that that's legitimately what's going on and we're not all following some other false prophet. So I try to keep my, always question things, right? I'm always questioning my sanity. 4802, the spy campaign failed. The Russia failed. The Wiseman-Mueller failed. The leaks failed. Fake news reports failed. Impeachment failed. CDC, who recommended do not close borders, failed. What's going on? So the question is, what if C-19 didn't actually exist? What if this wouldn't have happened? Think about it. And think about the timing. That's really what they're trying to call out here, is the timing of this. Could you not have had it time out better? Could you have, if you were to plan this yourself and be like, all right, if I could just release a virus and get everybody like freaked out, what would be the perfect time to do it? And how do you roll that up and ramp it up right before an election, coincidentally? So economy today, yeah, it's getting better, which is weird. That's really freaking them out. So they're trying to figure out how they can shut down like Florida and some of these other states. And we're going to show something with that in a second. Unemployment today, it's what, 8.4%? Chris Wallace even pointed that out, but that's something the news doesn't talk about. So unemployment significantly better. But what about the trade with China? That whole phase 2 thing would have been happening by now. They would have been held accountable. There would have been billions of dollars coming our way in fair trade. That got interrupted. The rallies for POTUS versus Biden attendance, the rallies got impacted by that. Trump's ability to get his message out got impacted because the media won't say anything nice about him. Fox News is still deep state. So they don't necessarily, during the day especially, they don't say a whole lot of nice stuff about Trump. I mean, a little here and there, but I mean, more than CNN, but certainly not very much. So Biden's interviews in his non-basement, right? They don't ask any tough questions. He gets easy stuff. Biden's questions in non-basement, he doesn't get any of those. In fact, we even got him in the debate, and Biden still won't answer those questions. Removal of delays regarding Durham, the interviews, testimony, all that, right? People, I don't want to come in and interview if there's COVID. I don't want to get sick. That got affected. How about the removal of Biden's ammunition regarding the debate? Now he's able to use this 200,000 dead, the economy's down, unemployment, debt, and then he just blames it all on Trump. I thought it was really funny how he kept blaming the virus on Trump. He didn't create the virus. The virus happened to every country out there, but yet it's Trump's fault. Now, we can question whether he handled it right or wrong, whatever. I don't frankly think he could have done anything differently. I don't think he could have done anything smarter. I think shutting down the economy more would have been worse. I think forcing people to wear masks wouldn't necessarily be better. So I agree with where he came from. I don't agree with Biden for sure. Removal of mail-in ballot harvesting and fraud of normal in-person voting, right? Because they can't cheat with the in-person stuff. The only way the deep state had a chance on this election was to try to either A, get people to vote by mail, which they could possibly manipulate. Possibly. There is evidence to suggest that some votes have been manipulated. There's evidence in Pennsylvania, other states, lots of evidence of people actually hiding ballots. Maybe not huge numbers all the time, but there's stories out there. So there's a question, and that's really the one thing that a lot of people are suggesting. Is this supposed to put a big question mark in my mind about the election? And many think that is what this whole thing was supposed to do. We get past the election, we drag on because we don't know who won, and then eventually we go into some alternative plan. And of course, Pelosi thought she was going to be running things, but as it turns out, that's not really how it works. And how it would work is they would actually go to each state and allow each state to essentially pick the president and vice president through the Senate and the House. Well, states controlled by Republicans is something like 26 or 28, something like that. And I think it's like 22 for the Dems. So the reality is there's more states that are basically right-leaning, and so thusly would probably choose President Trump and Biden again. President Trump and Pence again. So it doesn't go back to Pelosi. So that might fail anyways. But what else are they trying to do? Removal of tech, or this tyranny, if you will. This whole censorship thing that's been going on. So the World Health Foundation, versus the anti-WHO people, right? You can't really rip on them because you get censored. That's not cool. Or terminated or banned. It's all around this COVID-19 stuff, trying to deal with whose information is more correct. You have the CDC, you have the WHO, and then you've got all these other independent people. And we're only allowed to talk about the CDC or the WHO. We're only allowed to quote them as proper, which maybe is going to change a little, and it's certainly rolling some feathers or ruffling some feathers. The removal of the bailout attempt regarding California and New York, right? This was their whole plan, was to use this to get some of that government money, some of that government cheese, to try to fix California and New York because they have so poorly mismanaged their states for so long and are in such extreme deficits that the only way that they can actually fix it without having to basically come public is to have a huge infusion of taxpayer money. And that's kind of been stopped, but that's what they were going for. So the mathematical probability of COVID-19 event as a solution to the above perfectly timed window of opportunity starting regarding the impact of the November 3rd, the primary election, and the whole advancing of the Democratic Party, right? That's I think what they're trying to talk about here. This whole thing seemed to really help push that direction. So who does benefit the most? That's really the big question, right? Why did the White House strip the CDC control of the C-19 data? Bigger than you can imagine. Now, This makes sense to me, and when I saw this article, frankly, I was about like saying to myself, about freaking time. This really should have happened quite a while ago, but apparently the Trump administration has ordered hospitals to bypass the Center for Disease Control and Prevention and send all COVID-19 patient information to a central database in Washington beginning on Wednesday. This is going to do a couple things. First, let's talk about the fun one. This is actually going to make it a third source of legitimate information that we're allowed to talk about because they will become an official source of the information. It's probably going to disagree with the CDC. And that is the second point. There is a strong chance that the CDC is rejoicing in death counts because it is now being politically used against Trump. Now, the fact that there's more and more people that are getting sick, great. We're testing higher and higher. Now we know the mortality rate is ridiculously low, right? So if you get COVID and you're under 70, and you don't have any crazy if you get COVID and you're under 70, statistically speaking, you got like a 99.5% chance or better of being completely fine. If you're over 70 and you have other situations that are going on with you, now you got like a 95% chance, 94 point something percent chance. You still got a really good chance of surviving. Being over 70 in the highest risk groups, you've still got a pretty good chance of surviving. It's kind of interesting. Now, one thing that kind of got linked in here, I don't know how I got here, but CDC, and there's a number of neat little graphs that they show, states representing estimates for percentages of inpatient beds occupied and all this stuff. And kind of when you go through this, you start to see this trend in the southern states, which I think tend to be a lot of Republican states, but which is kind of funny too if you think about it. It's all the Democrat states eons ago. But what you're starting to realize is they're really pointing out a lot of the cases, a lot of the people that have cases. But again, that mortality rate is something to keep in mind. So they keep plugging it. They keep trying to scare people. So right here is state representative estimates for percentages of ICU beds occupied by all patients. So on these purple, the worst, 70% or more of their ICU beds are currently occupied. So we got, Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, or Arizona, sorry. So again, some of the southern states, some of the places where I think they're trying to worry about the numbers or freak people out a little bit. I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's to scare them into voting. But again, the CDC seems to match the dialogue that's going on with the left or the deep state. And so I think the White House is attempting to essentially try to remove the CDC, your Fauci's and all those people from being able to take advantage of, politicize, and or improperly report. And I think that is the key thing. All these deaths that they've talked about. There was a moment back, it was like a month or two ago, where the CDC acknowledged that their numbers were probably overinflated. It was Birx, I think, that was talking about it. And they've still done nothing about changing those numbers. Why? Because higher numbers benefit the deep state. So they think. So that seems to be what is going on with these crazy COVID cases. We're going to see how that plays out Wednesday of next week. They basically have to start giving all that information to the White House instead of the CDC. So I don't know what's going to happen, but it should be very interesting. And I'm very sure that the left is going to complain majorly. The deep state's going to complain majorly because they will not have control over the information. And they, frankly, are going to say that Trump's going to be hiding it behind a firewall, if you will, and keep people from it. I don't think that's going to be the case, but he's not going to use it to hurt himself, that's for sure. And again, I know a lot of people don't trust Trump, whatever. It is what it is. I think I trust him more than I do the deep state, for sure. 4803, fake doctored image video dropped. This is the one I talked about earlier at the start of the video. So again, be careful. If you guys have Twitter accounts and all that stuff, YouTubes, all those things, don't share this video that's floating around out there, some Epstein cell cam video that's going around. Don't share it. You're probably going to get banned. Don't share it anywhere. I don't recommend it. But, you know, he was just giving us a major warning. 4804 pulling out another Twitter post. United States obtains final judgment and permanent injunction against Edward Snowden. This, I don't know exactly why this is being shared. I think it comes into, Snowden did do some stuff that's offended and upset a lot of people. Then some people are like, well, it's kind of cool, some of the stuff he did share. Again, not 100% sure. That's not my realm, right? I don't know intelligence. I assume when you do your non-disclosures and stuff, then you start telling people what you know. That's bad. These guys know a lot of crazy things. But what really came out or stood out anyways to me from this Department of Justice, The United States lawsuit did not seek to stop or restrict the publication or distribution of permanent records. That's the name of his book. Rather, under well-established Supreme Court precedent, Snepp versus United States, the government sought to recover all proceeds earned by Snowden because of his failure to submit his publication for pre-publication review in violation of his alleged contractual and fiduciary obligations. In December 2019, the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia found in favor of the United States in the suit against Snowden on the issue of liability and held that Snowden breached his contractual and fiduciary obligations to the CIA and NSA by publishing permanent records and because of the prepared speeches and for giving prepared remarks within the scope of his pre-publication review. So all of those things are major strikes against Mr. Snowden. He's not going to probably fare well. I don't know how they keep the money or get any back the money that he's already gotten, but certainly they can stop any future money that goes his way. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out as well. And again, kind of interesting why it was even sort of brought up. I'm not 100% sure what that's all about. We'll see if we got any new posts. Sweet, nothing new. So 4804 is the most current I have, at least as of 11:17 Pacific time. Hopefully we'll get more information coming out. Hopefully a lot more of this stuff starts to make sense. We got another debate coming up with Pence and Kamala. I think that's this weekend, Saturday maybe, coming up. And then on top of that, we've got the week after and the week after that, we've got supposedly a couple more debates with Trump and Biden. We'll see how all that plays out. A lot of stuff going on. Remember, if you see something, say something. Be careful about these bad videos going around. Be really careful what you share. If it's supporting violence, if it's talking about violence, any of that kind of stuff, it's not okay. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't support violence. Don't be a part of that. Don't try to egg it on. Let things happen. Hold your ground. Defend yourself. Stand back. Let things play out. Because right now, the left has done a very good job at making themselves look really bad, even though they keep trying to blame the right. People are seeing it's Antifa, the ones carrying the flags, the one dressed like they are. It's not Proud Boys that are going out and causing these riots. It's not the Proud Boys that are walking up to people's houses and telling them to say Black Lives Matter. It's not the Proud Boys that are walking up to people sitting at the dinner on the street and having people walk up and steal their food and get in their face. It's not the Proud Boys. It's the people on the left that are running around and putting their fists up in the air and all of that. So again, people are seeing it. Let's let this play out. Let's try to be chill. We've got a big month coming up. Red October, man. It started. So let's stay strong, folks. Let's stay strong. Let's stay together. Let's keep talking. Let's keep educating one another. And let's keep doing the best we can. Where we go one, we go all. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.